Bosworth, Assistant City Manager. You're well aware of the important initiatives that the Economic Development Council has carried out for the city over the years. Tonight's presentation of the Multimodal Task Force report is the latest of these significant projects. With us this evening is someone who needs no introduction, EDC Chair Tom DeGiorgio, who will kick off the presentation and introduce our speaker, Carla Coleman, who chaired the task force.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, well, appreciate that very much. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager, and City Attorney, good to see you all tonight. I think I've spoken to most of you all about the importance of transportation in a growing city. So having a long-term multimodal transportation plan is the paramount importance of growing cities. As our population continues to grow, the need for efficient, sustainable, and accessible transportation becomes increasingly critical. A well-designed plan that incorporates multiple modes of transportation, such as trams, shuttles, cycling lanes, pedestrian walkways, etc., not only reduces traffic congestion and air pollution, but also enhances overall mobility and accessibility. It ensures the city can evolve to meet the challenging needs of its residents, support economic growth, and promote a higher quality of life. With that as a background, and many discussions with our P&Z Chair, Fred Stacer, we decided it was important to set up a task force. The task force is a little different than the committee because we have a start date and a sunset date, and we were so pleased to have Carla Coleman, who happens to be a city resident, member of the P&Z board, and actually one of the senior professionals of urban development in all of South Florida. She happens to be in our backyard. She agreed to chair this committee. Just for those who don't know Carla, I want to read a little bit about her biography to see the importance that she brings to this committee and what she's going to, with the task force, and what she's going to do for the committee that I'll talk a little bit more about at the end. Carla is a 40-year resident of Pompano Beach. In 2016, Carla retired after more than a decade as the Urban Land Institute's executive director for Florida and the Caribbean. She continues to work on specific projects for Principal Coleman and Associates Consulting. Her career is long focused on strategic plan problem solving, especially in the fields of urban planning and redevelopment strategies. Past posts include 18 years with Florida Atlantic University, 13 as Senior Vice President for University Advancement. When appointed VP at the age of 38, she was one of only 3 female VPs in the university system. Carla joined FAU in 1984 to run the university's Governmental Policy Research Center, where its permanent director was on loan to the governor. She also spent almost a decade in various staff positions for the Florida legislature, including serving as executive director of Broward's first Governmental Efficiency Study Committee. The most important thing is that Carla's in our backyard. She said yes when we asked her to chair this committee. So without further ado, and boring you more of the unbelievable bio here, because most of you all know her, I introduce Carla Coleman. Carla, thank you for all that you do for us all the time and on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I wish my mother was here to hear that. It was my pleasure to work with the other members of this committee. I know that your time is limited tonight, so I'm just going to hit a few highlights for you. This was a 15-member committee task force that the EDC put together with members from city staff, business owners here, as well as residents. And it was my pleasure to do that. Before I go any further, I just have to commend you on your staff who were appointed to this task force, showed up and worked, and they were outstanding. And it was my pleasure to get to know some of them just a little bit better. We only had 4 meetings last summer because, as Mr. DeGiorgio said, this was a task force. We wanted to identify the issues. Our mission was to identify the key issues and frame them for further action. Your staff was already working with Kimley Horn to try to pull together a scope for the city's very first transportation master plan. A city of our size desperately needs one, especially with all of the development that we're seeing going on, passing through the Planning and Zoning Board right now. And we wanted to make sure that this study included recognition of all modes of transportation here. Things we have now, things we may have in the future, but everything from pedestrians to kids riding their bikes to school to pedestrian cycling, cars, heavy trucks, trains, our intercoastal waterway issues, but there are some key issues we need to identify and work on early. I'm a little rusty on PowerPoints, guys. One of the things, timing's everything, and the city is still working with the scope for Kinley Horn, but they gave us an opportunity to meet as a task force with Kinley Horn at one of our meetings. We had spent a great deal of time working through the major issues that we as a group saw for transportation here, but there were some things specifically we wanted to see if they could include. I skipped a slide. Well, I'll go back to that. Included in that study, that was a bike plan for Pompano Beach. As one of our cyclists on the committee said, you can't get from A to B. You can go places, but you can't get from A to B. And as we are doing our major streets, thanks. Okay. The highest priorities for this committee were promoting safety. Our public safety representatives were very helpful in this area. And whatever transportation plan we come up with, its highest priority must be safety for all modes of transportation. There needs to be a way to better integrate transportation into our built environment and our planning for our built environment. Right now, especially from a planning and zoning perspective, we see often, okay, there's been a traffic study for this, but how did it work after it was built, and was that traffic study accurate, and what else needs to happen to make it a workable grid? If we get this wrong, we get the transportation integration with the built environment wrong, all of our work will be for naught because you won't be able to go any place, at least not the way that you want to. So timing's everything. This is the time for that transportation master plan. And we also, as a task force, identified various ways that as a city, we need to be more transparent, not only about what we're doing, but what we're planning. So, with Kinley Horn, we talked with him about a bike plan. We talked with him about creative funding ideas, because nothing comes cheap these days. These are items we wanted them to the city to at least talk to Kinley Horn about. We made it very plain to them that we were a task force. Their negotiations were with the city staff, and the city staff would have to figure out how much money we have to pay for certain things. But these were items that we thought, as a citizens group and a staff group, were important. Forward-thinking strategies. Don't just crunch numbers. Tell us how the best communities are dealing with this and how that's applicable here. Both short and long-term solutions. If you've ever dealt with transportation planners, they think 2060 is right around the corner. Well, we want some shorter-term timelines for some things, and resiliency requirements. We all know what that means these days. But there's a great deal that the task force came up with that are really not subjects for the Kinley Horn study. There are other things that we will be doing further work on, or someone will be doing further work on, that we identified as issues today that the city itself can deal with. One of those is, as you go through this process, there needs to be an identifiable point person for transportation. There needs to be a go-to person for transportation. I hesitate to call it a transportation czar, but we need someone identifiable in that area, so there's not a lot of this going on. There needs to be better communication, especially in the website. Our website right now, boy, do I know how hard websites are to get right, but it's not searchable. You can't find a lot of information about projects. We don't want to be calling your staff all of the time saying, as a resident, well, what's going on with my street? They need to be able to go on a site and find out what are in the plans, what projects are up, and when their project is going to be at the top of the list. And once we have a bike plan, promotion of that is going to be very important. We've done a lot of work to encourage our new developers, new developments, to make lots of room for bikes. Now we need to make lots of room on the streets for bikes. A strategy for intergovernmental, a better strategy for intergovernmental workings. We know we have issues with, well, let's just pull one out of the air. FEC. They don't want to be bitten by 100 little fleas, I hear. Well, fine. Let's pull the cities along the corridor together and speak with one voice. But, you know, until someone comes up with a framework for that, it's just another idea. Enhanced maintenance. This is going to become a huge issue going forward because as we make plans for bikes and pedestrians and cars and trucks and our streets become more complex, it's harder to maintain them at the level for each of those uses. The old budgets for maintenance have to be really reworked if the system is going to not only be put in right, but be functional as it goes forward. And last but not least, it's not going to be probably something Kinley Horn looks like anytime soon, but the city needs to be thinking about putting together a comprehensive parking plan for the city. I was introduced this evening to our parking czar, and I look forward to spending some time with him as this goes forward. But those are the major points that in 4 meetings we began to discuss. The report, the 3-page report that you have, lists all of the members of this task force and in greater detail the things we talked about here. What's next? The task force recommended creation of a permanent study group and continuation of work on the issues that I discussed here, the other ones that are outlined in our report. And I just want to thank all of you for allowing me to come tonight to speak to you about this and to thank you for allowing me to serve on the task force.
Good, thank you. Appreciate that, Carl. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you.
I want to say appreciation too for the city. As some of you know, I'm the chair of the planning council, and I get stopped, and Rex serves on the planning council with me, and we get stopped often about how our city staff works so closely with the business community. And I have to say, it's really a reflection on you, Mr. City Manager, and your whole executive team. They did a fantastic job on this committee, on this task force with Carla, and we're going to ask more of them too, because on every standing committee that we set up at the EDC, we have senior members of staff that actually volunteer to participate, and we've got several of the city managers that are stepping up and going to serve on this task. So with that, I'd just like to tell you about the action we took based on those recommendations at our Economic Development Council meeting last night. We set up a long-term multimodal strategic planning committee. That committee is going to be chaired, again, we're very fortunate. I kind of hit you with the punchline early. Carla said, agreed to stay on as the chair for 1 more year. Up to 1 more year, she said. Up to. We'll see. We're going to have Earl, our assistant city manager, say he's going to stay on board with that. We're going to have public safety representatives, and I think I volunteered the major and Captain Torres last night at our meeting that we're going to stay on for public safety. Public works representatives. We're going to have zoning representatives there. We're also going to have our Northwest CRA chair. Whitney's going to stay on board. Jack Rogerson from the ECRA is going to stay on board with this. We're going to have 2 members from the Economic Development Council. We're going to have 2 representatives from the city at large, just residents who are concerned that served on the task force with us. And then we'll add additional members as we see fit. For instance, Jeff, who we talked about with parking, he's going to come and help us understand that piece of the puzzle. But I just think it's so important right now where we're considering big things in Pompano Beach and big developments. We don't want to be accused of not thinking about the little things like how we get from A to B, how we make sure the quality of life stays high and gets better for our citizens. And transportation is the key to that. And this multimodal task force will be there for the foreseeable, or it's a task force, but the multimodal committee will be there for the foreseeable future, like the tourism subcommittee is, like the education subcommittee, the resiliency, and the public safety. So with that, I just want to say thank you for everything you do for the city, and thanks to your staff, Mr. City Manager, for everything they do.
Thank you, Mr. George. I appreciate it. I just want to say this is this is not the end of the road, but this is the culmination of a lot of discussions we have had throughout the years. And I mean, thank you all for what you guys are doing. But this is a step in a long progression that we've been involved in for years. We knew early on that we were going to have growing pains. When we started the whole redevelopment process of Pompano Beach, we knew, in fact, I think it was you, Mr. Giorgio, said, well, people were complaining, well, what are we going to do about the traffic? Well, back in the days that we were having those kinds of discussions, there was no traffic. And you said, well, look, let's get some traffic first, and then we'll deal with it, which is, that's true. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? But we have been looking at this for so long, knowing that it was on the horizon, and it is still on the horizon, but it's here now. Bigger things are on the horizon. That's why it's great that we are taking this step. Thank you so much. I mean, this is really what the city needs. And I know that the city looks at all this kind of stuff, and as each individual development comes forward, we of course have worked with the developers to try and talk about and work on the issues that development brings to our city as far as transportation and problems with transportation. And some developers do more than others. Some are willing to step up and participate, and some aren't. So we need a better process for that kind of stuff. And I think this task force and the committee is just fantastic. I mean, and Mr. Harrison, I'm sure, considering that the personnel that's on, we're going to be 100% behind this, because it's not just a volunteer committee. I mean, this is something that really needs to have teeth. I mean, we need to have access to people like the Kinley Horns. I mean, there's going to be costs involved in this going forward. So it's critically important for the future of our city. Thank you all so much for what you, and Carla, I mean, I know Mr. Giorgio, he was barely touching the surface with your resume, but we are indeed fortunate and lucky to have somebody with your background and caliber to be on for at least a year.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Any further commission discussion? Vice Mayor.
I think this is a great point brought up, having a point person and continue to look at this and really get organized. I know we all have many different talks, and you guys know how passionate I am about making transportation networks happen in this city, in this county, and even further. But it's definitely a great. I know we've all been talking about this. It's been in the works, and we constantly are looking on this. But this just takes it to the next level. And again, thank you to all those involved so much for giving your time to help make the city better. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And seriously, I mean, that deserves repeating. Thank you guys for doing what you do. I mean, we have got such incredible volunteer talent throughout this city, and it really shows. It shows in what we've got as a city. So thank you very much. Further, Commissioner Fournier.
Just quickly, thank you, Carla. Thank you, Tom. I do know it is volunteer work, and I appreciate all the effort that went into this. With respect to traffic, I think we are there. So we are at that point, if not past it, where it is important to be having these conversations. We need to consider bikes, we need to consider golf carts. I get a lot of questions about golf carts and how we can make our city more friendly for those modes. And parking is obviously top of mind for people. And I also think we just need to ensure as we go through this that we're honest with ourselves about the limitations of those types of transportation also, and the reliance on cars in this city too. So thank you, Carla.
Very good. Further commission discussion? Seeing none, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Look forward to working together. Absolutely.